What does it take to become the face of the world's most powerful luxury brands, only to vanish entirely at the absolute peak of your career? In 2010, Ambrose Olsen wasn't just walking runways, he was the face of Armani Exchange, Hugo Boss, and Dior Homme. He was the boy every designer wanted, the face that stared down from billboards in Times Square, projecting an image of perfect, unattainable masculinity. But behind the glamorous campaigns and the global recognition was a story no one saw coming, a story that would expose the dark, unforgiving underbelly of the fashion industry. So what really happened to Ambrose Olsen, and why does his story still haunt the fashion world? Was it the pressure of an impossible standard, or the profound isolation that comes with living a life out of a suitcase? To understand the magnitude of Ambrose Olsen's success, we have to look at the sheer speed of his rise. Born in Homer, Alaska on November 27, 1984, Ambrose was far removed from the polished, hyper-competitive world of high fashion. He grew up in a rugged environment, studying to be a carpenter. He surfed, boxed, and played ice hockey. He even planned to volunteer for the United States Navy. Away from sport, his interests ran in a completely different direction. His New York Magazine model profile would later list him as someone who loved listening to Mozart and Tupac, and who was fascinated by history and architecture. But the fashion industry has a way of finding exactly what it needs. And in 2002, at the age of 17, Ambrose moved to New York City to begin a career that would fundamentally alter his life. The early 2000s marked a distinct shift in male modeling. The industry was moving away from the overly groomed, pristine looks of the 90s. Brands were embracing a more rugged, authentic masculinity. Ambrose, with his striking features, athletic build, and natural charisma, fit this new mold perfectly. He didn't just walk into the industry, he was absorbed by it. Within a few short years, he was walking the most prestigious runways in Paris and Milan, working for designers like Kim Jones and Alexandra Herchkovich. His print career was staggering. In 2003, he landed a major Hugo Boss campaign alongside Raquel Zimmerman, a booking that immediately elevated his status from a working model to a recognizable face. By 2005, he was shooting for D&G at the specific request of legendary photographer Stephen Klein, known for his dark, cinematic style. He graced the covers of Tattoo and Wonderland and was photographed by Hedi Slimane for Viaman magazine. But his true breakthrough came in 2007 with the Armani Exchange campaign. Shot by photographer Tom Monroe, he starred opposite Alessandra Ambrosio in a sun-drenched campaign that made him universally recognizable. The campaign was everywhere, in magazines, on billboards, and in storefronts across the globe. He had reached the ceiling of what a male model could achieve in that era. Signed with Click Management, he was consistently working for Nautica, Yves Saint Laurent, Louis Vuitton, and Burberry. He was walking the runways in Paris, shooting editorials in London, and fronting global campaigns in New York. From the outside, looking at the billboards and the glossy magazine spreads, his life was a flawless trajectory of success, wealth, and global recognition. He was the blueprint of modern male beauty, living a life that millions of people actively aspired to. But a modeling career is built entirely on the surface. The industry demands that you project strength, confidence, and perfection at all times, regardless of the reality beneath. And for Ambrose, that projection was highly specific. In 2009, he secured a contract as the face of Giorgio Armani's Extreme Attitude fragrance. The name of the campaign itself is telling. Ambrose wasn't cast to look vulnerable or melancholic. He was cast to look invincible. He was the embodiment of a very specific, highly commercialized version of masculinity, strong, silent, unshakable, and entirely in control. This is the central irony of Ambrose Olsen's career. The fashion industry didn't just sell his face, they sold the idea that he was untouchable. When you are the face of extreme attitude, the world expects you to carry that attitude off camera. You are not allowed to be fragile. You are not allowed to struggle. You are a product designed to make other men feel inadequate and to make women desire you. The pressure to maintain this facade is immense. You become a prisoner of your own image, forced to live up to an impossible standard of masculinity that leaves no room for human vulnerability. To understand what that life actually looked like, you have to understand the reality of male modeling in the mid-2000s. The public looks at the wealth and global recognition of female supermodels and assumes the men are living the same glamorous life. They aren't. Male models earn a fraction of what women make. Sometimes they aren't paid in cash at all. They are paid in clothes. They have zero negotiating power, treated as interchangeable coat hangers, and often live crammed into cheap, overcrowded model apartments, far removed from the glamour they project on billboards. They fly economy, share rooms with strangers, and attend casting after casting, where a director looks at them for 3 seconds and dismisses them without a word. For every Armani campaign, there are hundreds of rejections that never make the press. The psychological toll of this constant evaluation is immense. You are not rejected for your skills. You are rejected because your jawline isn't sharp enough this season. It is a deeply personal form of rejection that you are expected to brush off multiple times a day. Psychologist Jonathan Alpert, who has studied this world closely, put it plainly. Models often face an utter lack of confidence behind these striking bodies and faces, compounded by demands that most industries would never tolerate. And for those who did succeed? Psychiatrist Mark Goulston identified a different trap entirely. When everyone loves you but nobody knows you, you can die of loneliness. 2 sentences. 2 different experts but the same diagnosis, and when you finally do succeed, the pressure only intensifies. You are expected to maintain that exact physical state, that exact aura of invincibility, regardless of what is happening in your personal life. Ambrose was at the top of this world. He had the contracts, the campaigns, the global recognition. But the structure that produced those billboards was the same structure that offered nothing when the cameras went dark. He was surrounded by people who needed him to look perfect, but very few who asked how he was actually doing. And here is the thing about the modeling industry's culture of silence. We don't know what was happening behind the scenes in the months before April 2010. No interviews where he raised concerns, no public breakdown, no record of him speaking out. That absence isn't reassuring. In an industry where admitting struggle meant risking your career, silence was the only rational choice. Whatever was building underneath the surface stayed there, invisible, exactly the way the industry preferred it. Until April 22, 2010, when Ambrose Olsen was found in his Manhattan apartment by his roommate, who was also a model. Police were called, and their investigation was swift. The official conclusion was unambiguous. Ambrose had taken his own life. He was only 25 years old. There was no note or explanation left behind, no prolonged public breakdown, no dramatic narrative played out in the tabloids, no warning signs broadcast to the world. Just a door, a roommate, and a silence that would ripple through the industry for years. The contrast is what makes the story so difficult to sit with. The man who sold extreme attitude, the man who projected ultimate confidence and strength, died alone in his apartment at the age of 25. It is a stark reminder that the images we consume are carefully constructed fictions, designed to sell products, not to reflect reality. The reaction to his death followed the standard industry protocol. Modeling agencies released brief statements expressing their sorrow, carefully worded to acknowledge the loss without inviting deeper questions. Photographers and fellow models posted short messages of condolence online, remembering him as a kind, professional, and talented young man. Articles were written noting his impressive resume and the tragic loss of such a promising talent. One photographer who had worked with Ambrose posted a photograph taken in London in 2005, writing simply, "Missing this young soul. We sadly lost him in 2010. He was one of my favorite models." That single sentence, posted years after his death, captured something the industry never officially acknowledged: that behind the campaigns and the contracts, there was a person that people genuinely cared about. Not the image, the person. But there was no pause. There was no investigation into the working conditions or the isolation of male models. There was no industry-wide conversation about the pressures of the job. The fashion calendar did not stop for a single day. The castings for the next season continued exactly as planned. The billboards featuring his face eventually came down, replaced by new campaigns featuring new faces, selling the exact same illusion of perfection to the exact same consumers. What makes Ambrose's story even more chilling is the broader context in which it occurred. His death was not an isolated incident. It was part of a documented timeline of loss that the fashion industry experienced within a remarkably short window. The sequence had already begun before he died. In November 2009, 20-year-old South Korean supermodel Doll Kim was found dead in her Paris apartment, a loss that had sent a shockwave through the industry just months before Ambrose died. And it did not stop with him. In June 2010, French model Tom Nikon, 22 years old, the face of Burberry, died in Milan on the morning of Men's Fashion Week, just hours before a show he was scheduled to walk. He had attended a Versace fitting that same morning. If you want the full breakdown of this story, I've covered it in detail in a separate video. The link is in the description. But the pattern is what matters here. Within 8 months, the fashion industry lost some of its most visible faces. These were not individuals on the fringes of the business. They were the elite. The faces on the billboards, the names on the contracts, the talent that generated billions of dollars in revenue for luxury conglomerates. Yet the structural response from the industry was chillingly minimal. The fashion machine is designed to move forward, driven by seasonal deadlines, production schedules, and quarterly earnings reports. When a tragedy occurs, the industry offers its condolences, posts a tasteful tribute, and immediately returns to the business of selling perfection. The year 2010 exposed a fatal flaw in the system. The industry was highly efficient at managing images, but entirely unequipped to manage the human beings behind them. It highlighted a culture of disposability, where talent was treated as a renewable resource. If one model couldn't handle the pressure, there were 1,000 others waiting in line. This dynamic created an environment of silence. Models rarely spoke out about their struggles because doing so meant risking their careers. There was no industry-wide reckoning, no new mental health protocols for agencies, no mandatory check-ins for young models living alone in foreign cities. The same system that failed him kept running exactly the way it always had. A few agencies introduced voluntary wellness programs, and a handful of countries passed laws requiring chaperones for underage models. But for adult male models like Ambrose, the assumption stayed the same. You're a grown man, you should be able to handle it. The burden of survival was placed entirely on the individual, while the profits continued to flow to the corporations. The fashion industry is built on the illusion of effortlessness, and acknowledging the profound psychological toll of the work would shatter that illusion. Ambrose Olsen's face is still out there. In those Armani Exchange campaigns, in those GQ editorials, in the Hugo Boss archives, still 25, still impossibly beautiful, still selling you the fantasy as if nothing ever happened. The boy behind those images has been gone for 16 years, and the industry that put him there has never once had to answer for what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. The fashion world sold his image to millions. It could not save the man behind it. So what do you think his story says about the system that shaped him, celebrated him, and then expected the show to go on without him? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't seen the full breakdown of the other male supermodel the fashion world lost in 2010, that video is linked in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.